Does Ireland have a goddess of sovereignty? Well, Deity agus Fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome. Jon O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School. And that is a question that we received from the community, and I'm going to do my best to answer it. So, the person's wondering, we have information about the Irish goddesses of sovereignty, such as Macha, but this person is wondering, can we also consider other characters like Anya or Maeve Latcharig as goddesses of sovereignty as well? Or really, to put it to the crux of the question, how many goddesses of sovereignty are there in Ireland? And I think neat answer, not hard to say, that is really the crux of the question and the core of the question, because we don't have a singular deity associated with sovereignty, because sovereignty isn't just about the landscape itself, it's about the rule and the relationship between the people and the land. And that the function of sovereignty, as it's expressed in that way, is somewhat different to what we see in other cultures. The In other like pantheons around the world, you have deities who fulfill a singular role for their people who worship or honor them. We don't see that in the Irish pantheon. We have these multifaceted expressions of multiple skill or multiple roles or multiple functions within each deity and how they relate to the tribes, the people, and how they fulfill for those tribes and people. So when we talk about the concept of sovereignty, many people think that goddesses of sovereignty are this Earth Mother style goddess of like fertility and abundance, and their body becomes the landscape, and it's about children and motherhood, etc. That's not the way sovereignty is here in Ireland. In fact, we don't have a goddess of fertility, we have a god of fertility. And almost inversely and interestingly, in many other pantheons around the world, they have a god of war, whereas Ireland doesn't have a god of war. We have a goddess of war, a goddess of battle. And this is something that my partner Laura has been teaching about her, her relationship with the amazing goddess, the Morrigan, for quite some time now. So the Morrigan fulfills a role in the Irish pantheon that is normally fulfilled by male deities in other pantheons, and the Dagda fulfills the role of fertility and abundance and hospitality, which is a role normally fulfilled by female presenting deities in other pantheons. So there's a very interesting dynamic when we look at that. But to get into the specific response to sovereignty, the Morrigan is seen as a goddess of sovereignty, and there's a number of different aspects that go along with it. Now, my partner Laura is the expert, in my opinion, on Morrigan lore, and we have the Morrigan Academy where you can go and learn a lot more directly from Laura's teaching, which I do too. I benefit. What pair of us share a lot as we explore this journey of education together. Um, but I'm not going to presume to speak for Morrigan specific content when there's a better voice out there to do it. Um, but the Morrigan does fulfill a role as a goddess of sovereignty, and more in the line of holding people accountable or holding the rulership accountable to their obligations and their onus to right relationship, this truthful connection to the people of the land and then the land itself, and making sure that the judgment of that is maintained and the consequences, should that be fucked with, are delivered. So, the role of sovereignty in Irish tradition isn't about ruling and controlling the people. It's about this core function that's expressed in multiple different goddesses in multiple different ways and places on the island through a whole different time frames. Like when we look at the mythological cycle, we have a king in Ireland by the name of Bress who's wed to the goddess Brigid or Brigid. And so in that essence, the cultural expression of kingship at the time was whoever is in rule of the people of the land should be wed to a goddess of sovereignty, and the goddess then represents the land itself and the relationship with the land and the other world, which is on sale Ella, the other life, which is very prominent in our lore, our folklore, and our world in Ireland today. Um, so Breege is in essence fulfilling the role or the function as a goddess of sovereignty in that union. But Breege herself is known as a goddess of, well, goddess that poets pray to, goddess of healing, goddess of smithcraft, like goddess of keening. Actually, she was the first to keen. I did a different video on that. You'll be able to find it. So it's not that there's one particular goddess. It's just that many different times when we go through the lore, we see this function of sovereignty. And it's not, again, that abundance doesn't flow through the goddess, or that the relationship or the managed relationship of rightness and truth doesn't flow through the goddess. It actually does. And we see many times where that truth is fucked with, and we have the consequences, as I already mentioned. But I feel like I'm talking around myself in a circle. So, I think a great example of that is Macha. She's a goddess of the other world. She comes out of the other world. She has a relationship with a man of our world, and she declares, "Listen, I will bring you abundance. I will live. I will manage your household. All of these things will happen, but the only thing I ask is you don't fucking tell anyone about me." And so the guy does. He benefits hugely. They are wed as man and wife. Everything is going great, hunky dory. He's raising a position of wealth and status and all the rest of it. He then goes to an Enoch with the King of Ulster, gets into his cups, brags about his wife. Next thing you know, Mac is pulled in to do a horse race, a foot race against the king's horses whilst heavily pregnant. So he breaks the rule. He breaks the one rule, which then leads to this inversion, this flip. All of the abundance is lost, and the curse of Macha is placed on the men of Ulster for 9 generations because not a single man would stand up for her. So there's this rightness that flows, or abundance, and there's a terminology I've learned from Laura, and again, Laura's talks on this. It's called fear flaha, which is the sovereign truth. And as long as the sovereign, the ruler, is living in this right relationship, living in just hospitality, the right connections, everything is abundance, everything is great, and everything is, peace and wealth and prosperity. But if the ruler or the person who is in this relationship with the goddess of sovereignty starts living in falsehood or corrupting the truth, or essentially, yeah, it's called Gauflaha. It's the sovereign's lie. They're no longer looking after their people. They're no longer serving the rightness and the truth of justice, hospitality, and connection for their relationship with our world and the other world. Then the consequences arrive very squarely, and it's war, it's death, it's famine, it's pestilence. It's terrible. It's the everything opposite of what people would want from a truth and abundant world. So there are many ways to look at these goddesses in Ireland and their role that they fulfill, this function of sovereignty that they fulfill. But the thing to really understand is that though they all fulfill the same job, they're not interchangeable. You can't just turn around and say, "Oh well, so given that they're all goddesses of sovereignty, I'll just like sub one in, sub one out, like, or just treat them all as a homogenous." That's not going to work. That's really not going to work for you, especially if you're talking about the Morrigan or Brigid, for example. If you try and disrespect them and treat them as generic deity, you will probably come up a copper pretty quick, because that's not right relationship. That's not truth. That's living a Gael Flaha, a sovereign's lie with a goddess of sovereignty, which I don't recommend. Or well, you can try, and luck be with you in whatever capacity you deserve for that, I figure. But the function that is fulfilled by these deities within their tribe is pretty important. Like, they appear time and again to hold people accountable to their obligations, hold the rulers accountable, which is why it's these goddess figures wed to a king or queen. At the end of our mythological cycle, in fact, there are three kings ruling in Ireland. They are the grandsons of the Dagda, Macul, Machecht, and Magren, and they are wed to three goddesses, Bamba, Fotala, and Eru. And those three goddesses, all at the same time, all on the same island, function in the role of managing that relationship of sovereignty, managing the relationship of the people to the land and the land itself to the other world. And everything is great. Everything is abundant and fruitful, like trees, fish-full rivers, which we can see by the arrival of the poet or the fella, Amergin Glungal of the Milesians or the Sons of Mill. And so this is the end of our mythological saga. Like, Amergin comes into the island and he sees the amazing abundance and beauty, and uh, everything is fantastic. It's like a wonderland that him and his Milesians have found on this island. But then through the misadventure, the breaches, the conquest, it becomes a wasteland. because when the Milesians take over, they don't live in right relationship, they don't form proper bonds with goddesses of sovereignty, and Ireland becomes a wasteland. And so they're all starving and dying because no crops will grow and the cattle on the island won't give any milk. Um, Interestingly, the resolution for that isn't to make a bond with a goddess of sovereignty. They actually have to make a bond with a Dagda, who is this deity of fertility, hospitality, and abundance. So the reason why I wanted to mention Bamba, Fodla, and Eru is because of the actions of Amergin, this particular fella coming into the island. He makes an arrangement or an agreement. He is the one figure of the Milesians who's trying to build or bridge a fearflacha, a truthful or a right relationship, a sovereign's truth with these goddesses. And so it's by his word that he promises each of the goddesses that their name will be on the island forevermore. And the names of those three goddesses are still on the island right now. There's a place, the only reference I found for Banba was there's a place called the Crown of Banba, which is up in the north of our Ireland. Fodla is still one of the names known for Ireland, but the most common and most prominent name is, of course, Eru, which became known as Era, which is Erin. And so the Irish for the island of Ireland is Era, which is still the name of that goddess from all of that time ago. So honoring the connection of sovereignty wasn't just the role of one particular goddess at any time. It was a function, a very powerful and very important function that was expressed through multiple goddesses in multiple occasions. Usually, if you're looking to figure out if an individual from our mythology could fulfill or can be looked at from the role of sovereignty, do need to dive into the lore. You need to explore everything about that goddess and see where they stood to hold power accountable, or where they turn up to challenge kings or heroes, in order to like drive them to live in Fearflaha, the truth or the sovereign's truth, or where they turn up in the lore and the mythology to deliver the consequences for these heroes, kings, would-be kings, failing in their duties. So you could consider aspects of, say, the Bive in her form as the washer at the ford, like, washing the bloodied garments when young Cormac, son of Concover of the North, is been elected to become the king in Ulster during the Ulster cycle. He has a horrible time of it trying to leave Connacht to return back because he's not the right person for the job. And so he comes across multiple different otherworld signals warning him, and it does eventually lead to his death. But one of those is the Bive in her form as the washer at the ford, washing out the bloody garments. And then she pulls out the garments, and it's literally the shirt that this guy is wearing. But he ignores all of the messages. He ignores all the omens of the other world because Gauflaha, sovereign's lie. He's not living in right relationship. So this is a function of sovereignty. This is a function of that role. And so the Bible could be looked at in that aspect of sovereignty. So when we talk about sovereignty, it's not just, oh, a king has to have a queen. It is the relationship or the power or the expression of sovereignty through its importance to maintaining balance, to maintaining the rightness and the truth, so that the land, the people, and everything can prosper and be abundant and can grow safely and securely in a truthful and honest way. So yeah, that like I'm not going to try and list out every single goddess of sovereignty in the Irish lore, because there are so many different times. As I said, we've got Brigid, we've got Morrigan, we've got the Bive in one way, Macha as well. You could make arguments about some of the other deities. Like the person who asked the question did mention Anya. Anya tends to be a little bit later, but does fulfill a certain role. Um, Connected with certain Norman families, but whether that's a maintenance of sovereignty, it's one to explore and to ask that question about. Personally, I don't see it myself, but I'm not going to say someone couldn't look into it and take it a little bit further in their studies. So speaking of studies, that's what we do here at the Irish Pagan School. We have over a year's worth of free information available. Go to irishpagan.school/free. Or if you're ready to deep dive in with information, you can go to the Irish Pagan School itself and take a full class on it. I did classes on lesser known goddesses of Ireland, which is available there as well. So there's a lot of stuff that we have on our school. So Do look after yourself and take care. And until next time, slán. Goodbye.